What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another long-winded RambleCast thing, and I am joined by...
Matt the Vet from Fearless Games.
Yes, he's back. And I thought we could be, those guys and discuss Horus Lupercal a little bit.
The War Master.
Yeah, specifically, whenever you read a codex or the main rulebook or whatever, it's always, Horus brought the Imperium to its knees, and Horus did this, and Horus did that, and he was, he killed Sanguinus, which he did.
Fake news.
And all that. But really, was Horus really as a big bad as he seemed to be? Like, was he really all that scary? Because when you really think about it and dissect it, Horus, yes, he's the War Master. Yes, he was considered the greatest amongst the Primarchs because he was found first, literally, and grew up literally next to the Emperor. But he had surprise on his side, right? Nobody knew this was happening, so nobody suspected any of his orders right up before it happened. He also had a surprise that there was half the legions been traitor, not just the four. So he had double surprise. It's like a double rainbow. And then he had, he crippled 3 legions in the process, killing 1 Primarch. Then he has the warp literally on his side. Wherever they want to go, warp is calm. Wherever the Imperium wants to go, the warp is just like a torrential downpour of a sea storm. Like the Imperial Fist had to fight the warp everywhere they went. Iron Hands, everybody had to fight the warp except for the Forces of Chaos, right? And so he knew where everybody was because he sent them everywhere he wanted them to be. And he made a beeline for Terra eventually. And all this culminated with, yes, the Emperor being interred in the Golden Throne because he was holding back, but with Horus's death and the defeat of the traitor forces. When you think about it, really how all the odds were stacked in his favor, is Horus really that much of a big bad, or was he much more of a blunderer? We always see him as like, oh, it was Horus, high heretic Horus. When really we know Lorgar's truly the one responsible. But
Logar.
I have to worship
He was
something.
He was the one that cut off all of Ultramar from the entire invasion and convinced Gilliman that the Emperor was dead.
Well, yeah,
he did successfully turn Angron into a demon prince.
Which, to be fair, saved Angron's life.
It did, but at the same time gave Horus not only took one of the Primarchs that they were fairly certain would be one of the ones that Horus may have a problem with if he fought against him, but made him even more to his cause because now he's a demon, and made him an even crazier berserker monster.
Right, but then Lorgar also tried to usurp Horus, and that didn't work. But
yes, well, I didn't. He was good. He wasn't great.
No, yeah, but I mean, like, let's face it, Lorgar's also the weakest of the Primarchs. Let's be honest.
yes. No, he is, even in like game stats, he is the weakest because they got rid of invisibility.
Right. Well, even game stats aside, I mean, yes, Ferrus Manus was killed, but Lorgar would have been killed if Conrad Curzon didn't be like, stop that. But
if Angron wasn't there,
yeah,
there was a couple times Logar almost died, and somebody else had to save him.
Oh yeah, but Korax would have cut him in half with his lightning claw, the painful way, not the one fell swoop, but the slow and painful way. If Conrad Curzon didn't step in. So you have Lorgar, who was really responsible for the whole heresy happening. He had to worship something. He found the gods. He's the one who had Erebus steal the anatheme that wounded Horus so they can get the warp to come into him and permeate him and corrupt him. He's the one that brought the warrior lodges into all those traitor legions to kind of corrupt them as well. He's not the one responsible for corrupting every traitor. I mean, Falcon corrupted himself with the sword. But
Magnus pseudo kind of set himself down that path.
Yeah, Magnus really was. It was a case of,
It was a 50-50, Horus kind of lined up the pieces and
yeah,
Magnus kind of drank the Kool-Aid without realizing he was drinking the Kool-Aid.
yeah. That and Magnus ultimately was like self-preservation, go. but
Yep.
but so yeah,
But
that.
also, though, technically could say he was kind of like Logar because he did kind of make a pact with Zenich before everything.
Oh,
Kind of already setting himself down that path.
he basically made a pact with the warp in general, yeah. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it's also was a case of I don't want to fight against the Space Wolves. I don't want to fight against the Space Wolves. Fine, I'll fight. I'm gonna I'm gonna die. I guess I don't want to die. Okay, Z. It's like,
Yep.
um, but Horus though, in a sense, was a victim turned poster child because he, the only reason, and I don't really understand the reasoning 100%, except for the fact that it's called the Horus Heresy, obviously. Being the first Primarch found, he's the one most inundated with understanding the Emperor as best a Primarch can. So I guess if you're the Chaos Gods who ultimately are trying to kill the Emperor because that's your nemesis, that would be the Primarch to choose, is Horus. But really, when you think about it, though, and what's also kind of weirdly annoying is Horus kills Sanguinus, but at the same time, he was nearly killed by Leman Russ.
Well, to be fair, Leman Russ had a weapon imbued with the power of the Emperor when he did that.
But the way it was written was that Leman Russ chose to hold his strike back to try and cleanse Horus. It's like, don't give me that bull.
Yeah. But when I watched, because I just actually, oddly that you mentioned that I just finished reading that book.
By the way, spoiler alert, everybody. But
but after reading the book and looking at it, I came to the conclusion on that front that if the weapon wasn't a tool of the Emperor, after Russ stabbed him, Russ would have been like, okay, and then just batted it aside. Like, I think if the weapon was just like a traditional Primarch weapon, I don't think he would have won that fight, to be honest. That's just my personal opinion.
He ultimately lost the fight anyway,
yes,
Russ.
But
I just feel
that front was there. Like, when he sat there and went, I lost, I couldn't beat him. I was like, no, you could have. You decided you were going to have a conscience this time and hope to save him.
And it's just, well, his weapon is this purified spear of Russ, for those who are wondering. And it was purified and sanctified, and basically it was made. It was the paladin spear to fight down the demon.
Yep.
And with that said, it didn't make Russ any stronger.
No.
And that's what bothered me, because Sanguinus could barely put a crack in his armor. And we're talking about the same demon-infused, Chaos God-infused Horus. But when Leman Russ shows up, plot armor goes away. And it's like... but, yeah.
That was like what I always... If anybody ever says, well, Russ beat Horus, I was like, no, Russ stabbed Horus with a weapon built to kill Horus, and that doesn't count. That's like going, okay, that's like, for an example, a gunman shooting Lucius the Tormentor from 50 feet away. He's like, I defeated Lucius. It's like, no, you had a gun and shot him from 5 feet away. That doesn't mean you can beat him. That doesn't mean you beat him, but that doesn't mean you're better as a fighter than him. It just means you were smart and went, he uses swords, gun beats sword.
Yeah, although in like the power ranking of the Primarchs in the lore, Leman Russ and Angron are up there for being able to just like swat away people. So Horus is still very strong.
And I also like that format. How afterwards, Russ, even after being wounded, Horus was like that classic cartoon where they have the really big guy running down the football field and everyone's just grabbing hold of him. That basically was him with the Space Wolves, and he was just like, get off me, I can't walk with you on me.
Yeah, I thought that was funny, but also just weird. Like the whole concept is like,
It was weird where it was like, okay, I get it. You're trying to make him sound really intimidating because he's like getting dogpiled and it's not stopping him. But I'm just sitting there going, so wait, there's just a bunch of space wolves jumping on top of each other going, this will stop him.
well, that and like I get it. It shows a loyalty to Russ because Russ was about to die. Then one
Yep.
space wolf charged in, was immediately dispatched, and other space wolves showed up and went, "No, you can't
Yep.
kill the
We will choke him with our corpses.
we have to get Lehman Russ out of there." I get it. It just, for me, my biggest problem with that, and this is to Horus's credit, before we start beating him down again, is I felt it cheapened his final confrontation. And the reason I felt it cheapened that is Sanguinus is a beast also. And
For those who don't know, he chokeslammed a greater demon from orbit.
yeah.
Like
And
he took a demon, went up into the stratosphere, and then suplexed him down into the ground.
Yeah, and then broke the back of another like I think either the same demon again
It's the
or
same
another demon.
It was like that demon that him and him have a nemesis rivalry with.
Yeah, but I mean, like, at the defense, like here's the thing about Sanguinus, which is why when people go, "Oh, Sanguinus couldn't fight Horus," Sanguinus broke a demon's back at the Siege of Terra, single-handedly held back the forces of chaos at the gates by himself for a long period of time, and then went and confronted Horus.
Yep. And Logar himself has said, there is only two Primarchs that I would think would be a problem for you. One is Angron, and we don't have to worry about him. The other is Sanguinius.
Because he's an archangel of destruction.
Yep. And even like Gilliman, the Lion, Dorn, everyone was pretty much like, as long as Sanguinius is on Terra, everything will be okay.
Everything's fine. The Wrath
Like heck,
Incarnate is there.
the reason the Lion was late was because he wanted to make sure Sanguinius got to Terra.
Yeah, like that's how strong he is. And keep in mind, this is before the Battle of Terra started. Sanguinius was still recovering from his wounds. He still had basically sore legs and a sore back. And then he suplexed the demon, single-handedly held back the traitor legions, all of them, by himself, all of it. And then he went and confronted Horus, which meant he didn't just bamf into Horus's room either. He had to find Horus in that flagship demonry. So, mad props to Sanguinus. I feel like he should have been able to do more because how strong he is. But also it showed how juiced up Horus was by the four Chaos Gods.
Yep.
But
Yep. I also take part of Sanguinius's possibly also being also like what happened to him at Sigmas Prime, when just the psychic backlash of feeling all of his sons probably also hindered him.
Yeah, although his death did make his sons have the ultimate in Berserker Barrage and just destroyed everything on Terra. But
well, that's the trade-off. He no longer feels their pain; they feel all of his.
There you go. But the reason why I say I feel like the whole Lehman Russ Horus confrontation cheapens the final confrontation is it's when I believe it was an Imperial Fist Terminator finds the Emperor like down on one knee and wounded because the Emperor just can't bring himself to wound his baby boy, really, and Horus is staying defiant, and then that Imperial Fist, and I don't think it was Custodia, I think it was an Imperial Fist Terminator.
It most likely because Imperial Fists always get trashed.
Yeah, but basically bum rushes Horus, firing his twinling bolter and just like rushing him, knowing he's completely outclassed. And then Horus just casually flicks him away and like renders his flesh to nothingness with the warp power, and that is what shows how far Horus has fallen to the Emperor. Which the death of Sanguinus doesn't do that, which is a little bit weird. But just to see but he didn't see the action in progress.
Yeah,
but
clearly Sanguinius is just sleeping.
Yeah, but to see the casual nature that Horus, I guess, really helped solidify. It was an interesting solidifying moment. And then you have the dog pile of the Space Wolves. It's like, come on, do we have to mimic this and foreshadow what's going to happen later? It's like...
Granted, we should also keep note that we are just finally getting to the Siege of Terra, so a lot of what we're talking about may be completely retconned.
It might be embellished and added to. And,
I'm expecting aside from like the major key points that we always read in the rulebook, if it's not something that we would pull up the rulebook and read, I'm assuming it's going to get changed.
We'll see.
It makes the pain less when it happens.
We'll have to see what gets changed because
Yep.
one of the big things I'm interested in terms of seeing what's going to get changed is how Karn, the betrayer, he's not the betrayer yet, but
yes,
will be handled.
He's close.
Because he actually dies on Terra and is resurrected by Angron.
Yep.
So whether or not that actually happens, we'll see.
I kind of hope the guard thing still happens.
The guard thing,
where a lone guardsman found Horus first.
Oh, that's so.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, but it's like the whole Catachan thing. It's like, okay, we get it. They're Rambo and Predator, but we don't need to like over embellish them here.
Oh no, I just want that scene where a guardsman just ends up in the palace and standing in front of Horus says, basically does that, I don't care who you are or what you are. I stand with the Emperor. My faith won't be tested. And he just goes, well, then meet your Emperor in the next life, and just murders him. Like, I just want to see that scene of a guardsman standing up to a Primarch. He doesn't have to do anything. He could literally just die once he shows up, but just to show that resolve, that resolve that humanity can still generate. I want that.
Yeah, I got you. But Horus and Levan Russ, and also what bothered me about the whole Levan Russ Horus fight is that it was completely shoehorned in out of nowhere. Like, that was never part of the fluff until that book came out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, definitely.
And it's just like, okay, we have.
You know what it was? I think they did that because in none of the fluff thus far, the spear of Russ that
comes up ever.
It never comes up, but it's a huge piece of Ragnar's fluff.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, crap, we need a way to get this in here.
Yeah.
And because it was originally a spear that he slew Magnus with, and then we have the books where he didn't use a spear at all to slew Magnus.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, no, he actually used it on Horus, but the legend twisted it and made it where it was Magnus.
Yeah. But also, on top of that, it's just like, originally it was just fisticuffs with the lion and then broke Magnus's back. Fine. Yep. Cool. Then it is, he had the Night of the Wolf against Angron when the world leaders and the Space Wolves came to blows because of the Butcher's Nails. And both sides claim victory, but really both sides are ashamed of what happened because Angron, after a whole campaign, broke his one big axe in the fight, but probably messed up Levan Russ something fierce as well because it's Angron. But so you have that, and it's like then he goes and fights Magnus. Then he's going to fight Horus. It's like, who you want to fight next, guy? It's like, go.
Somehow he shows up in Imperium Secundus and beat up Conrad Kurz, and that's how the line was able to beat him.
Yeah. Somehow it's not actually a Callus assassin that kills him. It's actually Levan Russ disguised as an assassin. But
Ferrus Manus only lost because he was thinking about how awesome Russ was.
But Horus, to get back to belittling Horus.
Yes.
But
for me, honestly, in the long run, I felt the way he falls was always what cheapened him for me, because we had this whole story of he was doing all this and this and it was unbelievable and ultimate and blah blah blah, and then he made the one dumb mistake that we could make him do to kill him. They're like, oh, so he failed because plot convenience, and they just decided to make him 20% stupider just so they could have him lose.
Well, I figure that the one thing Horus embodies is pride.
Yep.
If you distill the Primarchs down, not just in their abilities, but in what aspects of the Emperor they kind of inherit.
Yeah.
Horus, I mean, you could say pride is a Fulgrim, but it's not so much. Fulgrim isn't so much pride. Fulgrim is like, it's beyond pride because Fulgrim wants perfection.
Yeah, Fulgrim is more obsession.
Yeah, he's obsessed, really. and he's obsessed with being perfect.
Yeah, right? He picked perfection, and his whole thing was his obsession, which fits for why he's a champion of Slaanesh, because Slaanesh is the god of access.
And Fulgrim's biggest pitfall, downfall, and flaw is he doesn't realize perfection is unattainable.
Yep.
He thinks he can attain that which is not possible because you can't be perfect. Because the moment you attain perfection, there's something better. So it's.
Yep.
But Horus is pride, 100%. Horus believes he's the best and that his legion's the best. He always has. So his whole lowering shield, I look at his whole eventual death as a pride thing, but in a way, Abaddon, kind of to save the Legion, transformed into the Black Legion and basically demonizes Horus as being a failure.
And he also claims that the Chaos Gods were always prepared for him to fail, and he wasn't actually meant to be their successor champion.
Right, and Lorgar claimed the same thing, so it's kind of like...
Yep.
But
which I find is I felt that was probably the cleverest way to say how he got everyone to be on his side, was to basically go, oh, our dad? Oh, you're worried because he's not here? Dude, it was never intended for him to win. And then it was like, oh, so we should join you because it was you who's intended to win.
Right, but it's just... Now, Abaddon's not a can of worms, but Abaddon, in a way, Abaddon's thought process makes some sense when you think about it, because especially, he is the first captain, he is, the son of Horus, if there ever was one.
Yep.
And
Little Horus.
Well, there's that guy who's Horus.
Oh, right, it's a totally different guy.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting that it's not Abaddon.
Yeah, Abaddon is not Little Horus, but Abaddon is basically Horus's son. If he ever had a son, it would have been Abaddon. But,
yeah. Well, he claims to be a clone of him.
He claims, because that also helps his right to rule. But
he basically only said that after they found out they could clone Horus, and then he just went, "Well, you don't need to clone him because I'm a clone."
But if you look at it on his perspective, the closest to Horus of anybody, Horus nearly dies. Horus gets better. Horus throws his lot in with these Chaos Gods, which apparently are why he's still alive.
Yep.
They grant us boons and gifts and power and victory time and time again. We have, and before all that, nobody knew what we were going to do. And when they found out, they only found out half the truth. We crushed them. We are driving everything back. Well, they thought. Really, if the Imperial Fists weren't so rigid in the command structure, they would have actually killed the Iron Warriors all outright. But
you talk about the Iron Cage?
No, the Iron Cage is when the Iron Warriors get revenge. But I'm talking about the naval. Okay. There was the naval battle that had basically Perturbo's fleet engaged with the Imperial Fist fleet.
Okay.
The Imperial Fists get the recall order from Terra, and because they are such a rigid chain of command, they follow their orders to the letter. So they pulled out, which resulted in heavy casualties on their side. But Perturbo was doing the math on his flagship, and he realized that his Iron Warriors were losing. If the Imperial Fist, he was confused why the Imperial Fist left the battle, because he knew that the Imperial Fist, being space experts that they are, because they are all about boarding action anyway. Not all about, but that's one of their specialties.
Yep.
Where his is crafting, theirs is defense and boarding actions. He was doing the math and realized, we would have totally lost. Even with my flagship here, we were gonna get destroyed. So it was and he was really mad about that. Hence the Iron Cage. But because
it's Perturbo.
Plus Rogel Dorn was on Terra. He wasn't even leading the attack. They were losing to not another Primarch. So that's really why Perturbo was really
Rogel Dorn was too busy telling Russ how much of a hypocrite he was.
Yeah, you gotta.
I have to say that part kind of made me okay but angry at the same time. Because I was happy to hear Russ go, okay, right, my dudes are using the warp, and we are no different from Magnus's dudes. The difference is we have limit. We set limits, so we don't go beyond that. I was like, okay, tell that to the rest of your freaking chapter.
Yeah. Well, clearly Magnus is showing you this is what it's like to go beyond. But
beyond Super Saiyan. but
But
like, but like, I was just sitting there, like, okay, I'm happy to hear Russ admit that the magic of Fenris is the warp. But at the same time, I was like, why haven't you told everyone else?
well, it's one of those things where like
He knows they'll never believe it.
or even that like it's such a fragile thing that if he told them and fully pulled the wool over their eyes, off of their eyes, they would like it would just break them. It'd be like no.
Yeah.
But you know, so Horus, outside of the one little space battle with the Imperial Affairs, Horus has been on the advantage all the way to Terra, and
Yep.
just to see him ultimately fail, it broke the Sons of Horus. The Sons of Horus were
Yep.
the first legion to retreat, earning them the ire of all the other traitor legions there.
And they for a while were like the guy everybody picked on in the warp after that.
'Cause all they were
Like
doing was sulking.
the Emperor's children were like blasting all their bases away, and just like they were just getting like handled by everybody after that. The ultimate what's that word hosing?
The ultimate-
Is that right?
Yeah, hosing works, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, the ultimate hosing is just, hey guys, look who's alive, my Primarch. Abaddon misses his Primarch. Abaddon misses his Primarch.
Right.
You know.
So when you look at it in that regard, he makes a lot of sense. It's like, no, we failed because Horus was a failure.
Yeah.
We had the cheat codes. Literally, Horus had cheat codes.
Yeah.
Like,
Which, that's one thing I always found interesting about the Legion itself, was how convinced they were about Horus's own hype, that they broke as soon as that hype was proven to be false.
yeah. And you know, in a lot of ways, it makes sense. In the same way, the Iron Hands kind of broke when Ferrus Manus died. Only their breaking turned into bitter hatred for the everything, including themselves. So it worked a little different, but it was more...
was a driving force for them, whereas it was a breaking point for the Sons of Horus.
But you know, it's a weird case because, and again, the novelization and stuff, depending upon what novel you read and what point of view you're hearing it from, it can change things. And that's one of the annoying things about having 47,000 books on the topic from Black Library, is that sometimes they almost feel contradictory to each other.
Yep.
But like, Horus, on several occasions, it almost seems like if there ever was a Primarch that maybe was possessed or suppressed in some way, it was Horus. Horus is kind of mortified at Fulgrim bringing him Ferrus Manus' head, like the fact that he would just cut off his head and bring it here like that. It was just kind of like that's
a little wrong.
That's Ferrus. What are you doing? It's like kill him, fine, but what are you doing? Type of deal.
In a sense, that probably could have been like a point that could have been essentially like one of his moments of, I guess I have to go all the way now.
Yeah. And what's also weird about it too, and going back to the whole Leman Russ thing, that whole Leman Russ confrontation with Horus really was weird, because Leman Russ sensed not the demon, not like he was
the influence.
He sensed the chaos gods juicing him up.
Yep.
His spear got rid of the juice, and he saw for the first time and sensed for the first time Horus, his brother, and purely his brother, there in front of him.
Yep.
And at that time, without any of the influences of chaos, Horus still callously, cast out the Emperor and the Loyalists and wanted his death and destruction without the chaos god's influence.
Yes.
And it's again another case that kind of cheapens the final confrontation, is because, and we'll see how they write it when we get there 3 years from now. But when the Emperor finally utterly obliterates Horus's soul, Horus kind of almost comes at peace with this and basically is like, I'm sorry, type of deal. And it's like, okay, so why was he so 180 degrees while also being devoid of Chaos God influence by the spear?
I took that to be more I think it goes back to his feelings when he first met Russ, where
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
kind of like, oh, there's my brother. This is the second person I've ever met that is akin to me. And then it slowly kind of realized on him, wait a minute, Dad wasn't. I'm not even good enough for Dad to show up. He sends this dude who he knew I kind of didn't like in the beginning. I think that was one of those cases, and like I get where you're saying, like it did feel like when all that happened, I was like, oh, this kind, like my first initial reaction to that whole event was like, this, wow, this kind of does cheapen final conflict with him. But I don't know if, because I tend to like rationalize a lot of stuff, and as one of my writing teachers once say, I do too much work for the author at the end of the day. Um, but I can see, like, when that first happened, I was like, oh, so they could have ended this anytime they wanted to.
yeah. It's weird. And for those who are saying it wasn't Imperial Fist, it was a Custodes, they have now, with more recent fluff that's come out, not from the Black Library itself, but from like the art books and whatnot. Originally, it was an Imperial Fist Terminator.
Yeah.
That's what Rogaldorn claims, but the savants think it really was a Custodes. The point is, this is a classic case of backpedaling on the established lore
Yep.
without counter-establishing it, just backpedaling to go, hey, let's make it
Yep.
ambiguous. But anyways, it's, I don't know, it just, everything was in Horus's court. If there ever was, if you looked at the stats,
Mm-hmm.
you would have, if you were a safe betting man, you were betting on Horus, because not only did he have the traitor legions, not only were they, clear of purpose, right? They had their own little culling amongst their forces. But
Yep, they got rid of those that they knew who wouldn't turn.
right, but they still are very large and in charge, and now they're solidified, right? There's no ambiguousness.
Yep.
When the
There's
heresy
a unified front.
when the heresy initially happens, all the loyalist legions had confusion on who do we trust, what's going on. We have no idea who's a loyalist now, right? The traitors knew who they were. Like, nobody knew. Like, the White Scars didn't know what was going on with the Space Wolves, didn't know what was going on with the Dark Angels, didn't know what was going on with anybody. There were some assumptions, right? Imperial Fist probably still good. The 3 legions that were butchered obviously are loyal. So it's like, whatever's left of them, all 5 of them are left, they're loyal. But outside of those 3, it was a real case of, well, who do we trust now? Sanguinus was the best friend of Horus. Is he loyal? A silly question because he's Sanguinus, but and so forth. But he had all that going for him. He had innumerable cultist forces, like untold number of Imperial Army people to his side, basically. I mean, both sides kind of have that. That's kind of just like the wheat and the chaff. You just harvest it, whatever, not a big deal. Kind of, unfortunately, inconsequential. He had one of the most fearsome Titan legions on his side.
Mm-hmm.
One of the largest and most bloodthirsty and capable was like the one directly underneath his command. Basically, he had Mars. The Dark Mechanicum for a time ruled Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they had like Legio Mortis is the legion I couldn't remember the name of that he basically had on his side.
Yeah, the Legio. Oh, I'm sorry, I was kind of like spaced out. I didn't realize you were trying to find a Titan Legion. Yeah, Legio Mortis. They were the big. They were the ones that kind of, in a way, started the Titan Legion half of the war.
Yeah,
they just brought out their Imperator Titan and went scrap code everywhere, and everyone's like, "What is that?"
Yeah, but they were one of the legions that was really well known during the Great Crusade as being one of the strongest, and they had it on his side. They were like, "Yeah, no, we're with Horus. Horus is awesome." So he had that. You also had like Rogaldorn had to launch an attack with Sigismund to attack Mars to steal supplies off of Mars. That's how desperate and situation Mars was. So, and that's right next door to Terra. So you had the warp, the thing that everybody has to travel through on Horus's side. what did you have on the Emperor's side? You had a Primarch riding a rhino. It
To be fair, it was going over 200 miles an hour.
was going over 200 miles an hour. I really love that. If that gets taken out of the fluff, I am boycotting.
No, I will be. Perturabo has rules for that stinking shadow sword of his. Jiratekon better have rules for a fast rhino.
I just love he rode on top of a rhino, and then when they went to retake the starport, and if that's not in the lore, and if that's not in his rules, if it's not in his rules, I'll be annoyed. But if it's not in the lore, like from Black Library, when we get to that point in the battle, if they don't go, and the Khan rode upon a rhino and slew the forces of chaos, I'm done. Because I will write them and be like, you made a mistake. But yeah, no, Horus had all this in his favor. Now, Horus also knew better, being the War Master for a period of time, knew all the legions better than any of the Primarch really did, because he commanded basically his Primarchs to do things, right?
Yep.
Doesn't mean he was like intimate with the knowledge of everything, but he knew where everybody was. He made sure the Werebearers could get the jump on the Ultramarines, and that failed, right?
Yep.
All like the Werebearers got the jump on the Ultramarines in spades. They demolished one of their most beautiful planets, and all it did was piss off Gulliman. And you don't want, everybody makes fun of Papa Smurf. You don't want a mad Papa Smurf.
He's not a good guy to he's not a good guy to get angry. But if you know how to play him just right.
Yeah, but like when you attack one of his 500 worlds, you made a mistake.
Yeah.
You made a big mistake, especially when you had him muster on over there. You should have attacked it when you had him somewhere else. Then you probably would have destroyed like 5 planets more or something. But no, Gulliman is awesome, and you sick Lorgar against Gulliman, which thematically makes a whole bunch of sense, but really a bad idea. Even with Angron, it was which also that was really random. Like and Angron's here. When did that happen? It's like that wasn't originally in the story of Lorgar versus Gulliman and Werebearers versus Ultramarines. That was originally those two big powerhouse legions against each other, and that was it. And then all of a sudden, World Leaders and Angron were there. It's like, okay, we'll do that. But you had Sanguinus on a demon world. Not that was going to stop him. I mean, it didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't get out of his stuff.
It slightly annoyed him.
Yeah. You rustled his feathers, literally.
That was surprisingly, that book series kind of made me not like Sanguinius for a while, because I felt he was just way too. I thought it was like I read that book, and at the end of the book, I went, "You mean it was kind of like that scene in Roger Rabbit?" It's like, you mean to tell me you could get your hand out of those cuffs at any time? I'm sitting there going, you mean you could have ended this whole thing at any time?
I mean, he had that. The only wild cards he had, Horus truly had against him, were Magnus until he got Space Wolves and changed the orders for the Space Wolves en route. Before a sanctioning actually happened for Magnus, which was not a guarantee to happen. So he's lucky Magnus screwed up there.
He still did nothing wrong.
Yeah, because Magnus was a wild card for him, because truly, if Magnus didn't try to warn the Emperor, or the Emperor didn't respond in that way, Magnus would have stayed loyal to the Emperor.
Yep.
So that was a little bit of a wild card for him. The Khan, he knew he really couldn't get to his side, but the Khan is just a wild card in general. You don't know where he is, what he's going to do, because he's the Khan. He's the most forgotten Primarch. By the lore, he's the most forgotten Primarch. I feel so bad for the Khan, because he's got coolness for himself, right? He's got the Rhino.
He's got the super fast Rhino, and I think to be perfectly honest, I always forget why he's missing, and never question where he is. Like, I know he's not in the Imperium, but I'm never like, what happened to that guy? That's
Right.
I'm just like, oh, he's gone. Okay.
Yeah, and I just feel bad for the Khan because of all the Primarchs they get written about and stuff. He really has. I mean, I'm a Dark Angel fan, so I always want to know about the Lion, but we know leagues more about the Lion than we do about the Khan. We had that one little novella about the Khan and his forces attacking an Orc stronghold, and that didn't even tell us much about him. So, aside from the fact that the Khan is like Team 4 Stars Tien, just can't read that guy. But he's just like all the other Primarchs. Like I don't know. I don't know. I think he's loyal. He's loyal, right? Anybody got an idea? And the traders are like, we can get into our side, right? Does anybody actually ever talk to him? Did anybody know anything about this guy? So that's another wild card for him. And obviously he knew the Space Wolves were never going to be on his side, Horus. But like outside of that, everything else was under his control. He knew where the Imperial Fists were. He sent the Dark Angels away. He thought he was going to pin them down better and didn't realize the Dark Angels had teleport over they want tech. And then
Chachula or Tachula.
Yeah.
I have to reread the book, but I think it's pronounced Tachula.
Yeah, T'Chula. The win button. That single in one battle actually shattered the Night Lord's Legion.
The win button, that, even though it is a win button, he knew how to use it so it wouldn't be tempting.
Yeah. Because
the thing went, I can do all this awesome things. Can you get me to point B? Yes. Get me to point B. Don't you want me to do this and this and this? Does that get me to point B? No? Then no. Get me to point B. That's all he ever used it for.
Yeah, it's basically like, make me a sandwich. But I could just bring things to their knees and no, I just want a sandwich.
To a degree, I'd say that whole interaction, going off of other things that it proves, it kind of is a perfect example of how like Russ and Jarate Khan saw their sorcerers. They're like, see, our sorcerers know they can do A, B, C, or D, but they know only A will make sure they don't go evil, so they don't bother with B, C, and D because they know that's bad. And the Lion was basically the same. He knew that thing could do all this crap, but he knew the safe thing it could do was move him to places.
Yeah, it's like, no. What you fail to realize is that you are a galactic Uber. Now get me to point B. It's like,
and that was also in that one book that also kind of showed like why he didn't want to give it to Gilliman, because he's like, I'm pretty sure Gilliman will not use it to do really much of anything, but I also know he'll be tempted to use it to do almost anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just a further shows why he should never be confused for not being loyal, aside from the fact that half the writers like to make it ambiguous, but there's no reason to. But like Horus
unfortunately it seems like GW demands that.
Yeah. But like Horus had all this to his knowledge. He didn't know about the T'Chula, whatever it's called thing, but he had an idea of where the chess pieces were, aside from the Khan, because nobody, I'm sure half of the Primarchs forgot they had that brother. So you had no real idea there. But the end result is a battle of Terra that wasn't that decisive. When you think about it, pretty much every traitor legion just about was at Terra. And you had White Scars, Imperial Fists, and Blood Angels.
Yep.
And Custodes, which is like having two other legions because they're the Custodes, but you had 3 versus conservatively 6. I say conservatively because Fulgrim and his Emperor's Children just kind of pillaged all of Terra and didn't really focus on the battle. But
yeah, no.
They're kind of like, wee, pillage. And they went off.
Where's Child again?
Yeah, but so it's always, for the fluff demands, Horus is the big bad. Horus is the big bad. Horus, Horus brought the Imperium to his knees. And it's just like, yeah, but really, when you start dissecting it, it's kind of like the whole situation of, okay, and this is basically a situation. We have this thing called the Horus Heresy. So I guess Horus leads it, right? Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So how do we make him evil? Oh, right. We got to.
He's got to be that.
He's got to be that to do this. All right, here he is. He's evil now. And then it's like, okay, wow, we really bulked up the traitor legions. I mean, they're they got demon engines and demons and cultists and all this power and everything on their side. How do they lose? Oh, right, they got to lose so 40k can happen.
Yes.
It's like put the con on a rhino. That's how they lose. But it's. And I'm not trying to pick apart GW writing for this because this is quite literally how the Horus Heresy came to be what it is now. It was originally a blurb, and now it's a decade-spanning long novel series. But I don't know. When I look at all of the traitor Primarchs, Aragorn's too unstable. Aragorn can't lead anything like this. Conrad Kurz is the most unstable. Conrad Kurz is broken. Like this,
he's damaged goods.
Like that's a whole other topic for another time. It's like we have the 2 lost legions. So how screwed up with those Primarchs that we didn't lose Kurz? It's like, how did Kurz survive that? And how did the Emperor look at the 2nd, the 11th, and the Night Lords and go, you know what? I'll keep Conrad Kurz. Yeah. It's like,
well, he wasn't crazy in the beginning. He was only slightly crazy.
He was still Night Haunter / Conrad Kurz from the beginning. He had a conniption fit about knowing what the Emperor planned for him from the very beginning. And it's just like,
and he freaked out Sanguinius at one point too.
He freaked out Sanguinius. He freaked out and nearly killed Rogel Dorn out of nowhere.
That was the one that he freaked out, and he freaked out at Rogel Dorn. And I believe he did make Sanguinius go like, "Hey, mental note, don't piss him off."
Also, Vulcan saw the turbulence in his heart, but Vulcan couldn't bring himself to say anything because he's like, I already lost 2 brothers. I don't want to lose a 3rd. But yeah. It's like I'm just going to pretend.
Yeah, I do. It does make me wonder what other 2 legions did.
And by the way, that they did not go traitor. That's the big thing. The Horus Heresy was a whole new concept. Worshipping
no one
chaos
ever thought about that.
Worshipping chaos and turning against their father was new. Yes. These 2 lost legions didn't do that. That's the only thing explicitly said multiple times.
Yep. I want to know what they did where the Emperor was like, gotta stop that crap. But then, like you said, looked at Kirk and went, I'm allow it.
Yeah, I'm okay with this. But
the only other thing I can think of is maybe after wiping the 2 lost legions, he went, you know what? I think I was a little harsh. And just that's the only reason why Kurz got a pass.
Maybe.
But he survived vicariously through the Emperor feeling kind of regretful for what he did to the other 2.
It's possible. It's distinctly possible. But, Horus, when you look at, and part of the Horus Heresy is like, Horus is really the only viable option outside of Lorgar. Before Lorgar was really rewritten to be a pure breed scholar and not a warrior.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the only 2. But like on the loyalist side, you could, if we flip flop and the loyalists were traitor and the traitor were loyalist.
Yep.
You could see
it would have been successful.
Well, you could have seen Rogel Dorn leading it. You could have seen Goemon leading it. You could have seen Sanguine. Almost all of them, with the exception of the Khan.
To be perfectly honest, I think if it was reversed, I feel like it would be very much like Imperial Secondus, where Guilliman would have went, okay, guys, this is how we're going to run things. You're going to do that. You're going to be in charge of this. You're going to be in charge of that. And we're going to, that's how, like, he would have, I think, better organized a lot of the heresy.
Gulliman is the strategic brilliance of the Primarchs. It's always said that
he's got charts on how effective his charts are.
Dude, those are some serious charts. But like, it's always said, Horus had the most victories, and Horus was a strategic brilliance.
To be fair, Horus was conquering planets sooner.
Well, yeah, he was conquering planets for 3 decades before they found the Limon Rust. It's like,
Yep.
so it's not really fair to say
Yeah.
that, but it also, and one of the things about a Primarch, right? Of course, you're gonna call them strategically brilliant because they're a Primarch. But people have to
Yes.
realize there's a difference between being called strategically brilliant and being called Gulliman. There's a
Yes.
difference.
It's no, it's like the constant thing, Everyone always says, "Oh, the Lion was a brilliant tactician," and it's like, yeah, the Lion was a brilliant tactician, but Gulliman is still Gulliman.
Yeah, Gulliman is called the Warrior King for a reason. Like
Yep.
he is
You
he is a
know,
true like
like actually,
Lion's a brilliant tactician.
yep,
Horus has got strategic brilliance. Gulliman's a leader, and that's the
yeah,
difference.
and
Like,
to be perfect, like I know a lot of people always say, like, "Oh, what if I bet you if the Lion came back, he would fight Gilliman for control of the Imperium?" Be like, no, no, he wouldn't.
in fact, the Lion doesn't want control, if anything.
In fact, the Lion would go, "Okay, what job do I get?" you know he would be like,
Yeah,
"Okay, what are we doing and what's my role?"
like the
That would
big
be it. He would
yeah,
never want to do anything, and Dorn would probably go, "Can I keep building palaces?" And they'll be like, "Yes," and he'd be go, "Yay, Lego bricks."
exactly. But like,
And
for
Vulcan will
example,
just be like, "Can I go home?"
yeah, Vulcan's like, I'll just watch. But but like for example, we had one of the big things that the Bolter and Chainsword forum had going for a while was the what if scenario of the Dornian heresy. What if Rogel Dorn was led the heresy instead,
Hmm.
and he flip flopped allegiance? And my point is, even though clearly Gulliman would be the go to pick, Dorn can very well do it too because people like to rain on Dorn's parade
Yeah.
because he was unnerved by a psychopathic curse. It's like they were both standing. It's like they were both at home, with their daddy. Just
Yep.
hanging out in the watching TV in the living room. Commercial comes on. Dorn's like, "Oh look, new flavor of Cheetos," and then encourages claws him nearly to death. Like that's basically what happened. And
Yep.
it's just like, wait, what? So because of that, Dorn's the only loyalist Primarch that had the full circle of emotion from fear, anger, hatred, being broke. Like the Iron Cage broke Dorn.
Yep.
He wore
And
black only after that, and then he went and died, and he probably felt better for it. Like,
or he might not be. Dun dun dun.
yeah, but like Dorn was the longest conscious Primarch of the Imperium.
Yes, he lasted. Yeah, he lasted after Gilliman. He lasted.
After
Yeah,
everybody. He
the
was
only
still
one that maybe some people might argue is because Vulcan was there for the Beast after Dorn died
right.
or
But
went missing. Sorry,
yeah,
I keep forgetting they retconned where it's not his skeleton they found, his hand,
yeah.
which he probably doesn't want that back, to be
No,
honest.
you can keep that hand. But but like my point is like when you look at the traitor side, Lorgar may be the like a Lorgar heresy, like having him lead it instead would make a lot of sense, being that he has the intimate knowledge of the Chaos Gods. Like he would be like make the most sense for the other traitor Primarch that could have led it. But like Fulgrim would not make a good leader of a whole full blown heresy like this.
No,
Angron, no. So
no, would
Comrade
never work.
Kurz, no. Not even close. Perturbo was too rigidly mathematical, right? It's not that Perturbo couldn't do it. It's that Perturbo would scare away everybody in trying to do it.
Yeah.
He would be like, "I don't care if you're dying. Go die over there. If you die, I'll kill you." That doesn't make any sense. Stop
And
yelling at me.
to be
But
perfectly honest, at least in the few books that I've read with Rogaldorn, I'm not Rogaldorn, Perturabo, I feel his emotions would get too much in the way of things.
they would. But he's got a cold calculus to battle to the
Yeah.
point where it would be like his motions would get in the way, and it would basically be a case of Perturbo's yelling at me, "I want to go home," and it's like
Yeah.
type of deal. Magnus was still loyal, so that wouldn't work. Like none of them really work except for Horus and maybe Lorgar. But
Yeah.
when push comes to shove, you could make a case for Sanguinus, Dorn, Gulliman, Lemon Russ. You could make a case for. I'm sick and tired of being your executioner attack dog.
Yeah.
Everybody puts the blame on me. I hate you. Um,
Everyone expects me to do your dirty work.
right. You can even make a case for the lion, where loyalty is his own reward, and I'm loyal to myself. Right. You can make a
Yeah.
case for almost everybody on the loyalist side. Vulcan really not so much because Vulcan loves humanity. Right. Vulcan
Yes.
could never lead a heresy, but like I guess, and the reason I bring all this up in the form of, you could say, bad mouthing Horus, is that because I feel like Horus was the one evil Primarch where they were, or traitor Primarch, where to make the fluff up was kind of like, well, he fits the best. Let's put him in there. Let's make him do it. uh, um, you know, and the weird thing about it is that he was wounded by a Nurgle blade.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say that's weird is that typically when you deal with a specific Chaos God weaponry, the Primarch afflicted or dealt with it becomes devoted to that Chaos God.
Yeah.
Fulgrim to Slaanesh, the Death Guard eventually. Yeah, Mortarion would never work either. I forgot about him, but he would never work. But Mortarion eventually had succumbed to Nurgle and pledged themselves to that because they could not withstand it, right? And Tzeentch, we know it all. But
Yep.
Horus was wounded by a Nurgle blade, and the Davin Lodge that healed him, it's not really known if it was soon to be Chaos Undivided, but we don't really know,
Yeah.
right? Because it was on it was a very Nurgle situation. So it's interesting.
But wasn't he sent to Moriana afterwards?
I forget.
I'm pretty sure Moriana treated his wounds, and she's like an agent of. She was like the original Undivided.
Right, but I mean, like the moon in which he was wounded was like a Nurgle plague land moon.
Yeah.
And like typically that would mean, okay, now Papa Nurgle's gonna take him over, but specifically this was all done.
I chalked that up to the Chaos Gods went, who would be the one who could possibly make it some way to wound him to get his influence in, and they decided Nurgle would be the best option for that.
And it's just, again, being pride, because Horus embodies pride. He's really the only logical Primarch to choose. But
yes.
What's weird is, and this is also the big folly of Horus is also the big folly of the Emperor, right? One of the biggest hiccups the Emperor ever made is really he's written to flip-flop with how he views his Primarchs.
Yes.
On the one hand, he views them as a tool. On the other hand, he loves them.
Surprisingly, when I read that, my first experience with that was Arkan Land, the guy who created the Land Raider. For everyone who doesn't know, that joke happened. I feel like how he perceives the Primarchs is 100% based off who he's with at the time.
Yeah, who he's talking to.
So, like, with Arkan Land, he's like, these are nothing but tools, because he's like, well, he's part of the Mechanicum, so he would think me, being a machine god, would see them as cogs in the machine. Oh, well, this person is, an Adeptus Militarum thing. They would believe I would view them as a loving dad, so these are my baby boys, and...
Yeah, it's also weird because Malcador at one point also brings up the forget who, that once the Great Crusade is over, we're gonna purge the Primarchs, like as if they're nothing more than tools. Right? We're gonna have them fight against each other, and it kind of worked because the heresy happened.
He also flipped on that one too.
Oh yeah, but it's
because like that actually was another bring piece, because he says that to one person. Oh, this was all part of the plan. This was all part of the plan. I promise you, you don't have to worry. Everything is going as we designed it. Happened a little early, but we're gonna make it through it. And then he turned around and went, yeah, I lied to all these people to spare their sorrow, even though I envy everything about them, which brought me more solidification that half of what Malcador says and half of what the Emperor says when it comes to the Primarchs is all based on keeping up whoever's illusion they're in front of.
Oh, I know, 100%, but it's one of those things where, unfortunately, because of this, the waters become super muddy on what we can really divine
Yeah.
on as omnipotent readers on what to really look at. Because
Yeah.
on the one hand,
Because also not everyone reads every book.
exactly, and also Gollum came right out and said it.
Yeah,
We viewed him as a father, but he never really truly viewed us as his sons. Now,
where he starts going, I'm pretty sure I'm just a screwdriver to dad.
yeah, it's like, but at the same time, we see the Emperor acting in semi-fatherly ways. Like when he reunites with Korax,
Mm,
he imbues upon him wisdom and lets Korax liberate his planet, right?
yes.
And then when he reads with Korax, and Korax goes, well, how can I be, I remember my number being 19. How are there 18 Primarchs? And the Emperor has a genuinely sorrowful look. Now, you could say, well, he's acting. But
Yeah.
if he was acting, one of the things we have to understand reading a novel, if he was acting, it would have been brought up in some way in the description of his actions for the reader to
Yes.
understand that. We would be given a hint. It would instead of saying the Emperor's expression grew sorrowful, it would say the Emperor brought his expression to sorrow or something like that. As if he would, as if he was acting or whatever. Or like brought a sorrowful expression to his face that would almost seem genuine is how they would have written it or something.
Yeah.
But no, he had a legitimately sorrow expression for the two lost Primarchs, which also is interesting because out of all the things that happen with the Primarchs, those two lost Primarchs on both sides are viewed with sorrow. On the traitor side, on the loyalist side, it's like, yeah, it really sucks what happened to the second and the 11th. I haven't
read it yet, but apparently Fulgrim drops a big piece of truth about the two lost Primarchs.
Yeah, I mean, there's not. It's unfortunately
it's not like a giant it's not like a giant whoa, but it's like more than what we've been given in the past.
Yeah, the most of which we know about them right now is that the second Primarch's name is short, or the length equivalent, because it in one of the novels, in one of the earlier novels, it's like basically it looks like a CIA document. It's all like sharpied over, so permanent market over. So the length of the second
actually
Primarch's,
show that on the they actually show that in the Third Ed Space Marine Codex.
Yeah. But the length, I think, is what they specifically call out in the description in the novel, and it says the name of the second Primarch, I believe, the name's length is about the same as the Alfarius's name in terms of length, and the Legion's name is about as long as like the 1,000 Suns or whatever, and then the 11th Legion's Primarch's name is about the same length as Magnus the Red, and their Legion's name is about the same length as the Emperor's Children. It's like it gives you the slightest of hints into like something. So one is like Madonna has one name, the other one has at least two. So
and then we also found out that there was a battle that they partaked in.
Oh yeah, and
thanks to Regiment Standard.
Yeah, that's all we got. But yeah, my point is, the Emperor had sorrow.
Possibly Russ might have killed one of them.
Maybe not.
Yes, that is a maybe.
We also know that there was a black scroll casing delivered to both the Lost Legions, because when the Blood Angels got one, this is like they said it was the third time this happened to a Space Marine homeworld. So
yes,
whatever that means. But anyway, the Emperor had a sorrowful expression about that situation with Korax. The Emperor raised literally Horus. One of the unique things about Horus, which is why I feel like the heresy just had to use him as the poster child, because he's the only one that was poster childable. You know what I mean? Is Horus was found really early on in the Great Crusade. His planet of Chthoniya was only in the fluff, is only like several light years away from Terra. It's ridiculously close, so close that indeed the Emperor probably could have sensed him the entire time once they were scattered. So more than likely, when the Great Crusade happened, it was launched straight for that planet. Now, he didn't know it was Horus at the time. He just knew it was a Primarch.
He just knew something was there.
Yeah. So really early on in the Crusade, the Emperor found Horus. Horus was still growing. Horus didn't grow up purely on his home world. He was actually grew up at the Emperor's side.
Yep.
Like, the Emperor actually raised him the closest to what he would have done with the 20 Primarchs that they stayed with him.
Yep.
This is the closest we get to see that. And I'm just thinking, in all this time, with your favorite son, basically, or the one that you would probably call a son out of all of them, you didn't prepare him for chaos.
Yep.
And that's one of the biggest pitfalls of the Emperor, and ultimately for Horus, because Horus wanted to be just like Dad, right?
Yep.
So didn't have the best understanding of chaos. None of the Primarchs did. Not even the closest one that did was Magnus, and then Lorgar once he found information on them. But and then he became the premier expert. But it's just like it's just a big plot hole right there for the sake of having Horus, eventually succumb to them. But Horus is the only one of the Primarchs that did not grow up entirely on his world and was actually trained and raised by the Emperor. You'd think at that point you kind of go, look, kid, there are these things, right? They're going to say they're great, but they're not. Like, don't listen to the lies. But, yeah, I don't know. Horus is an enigma to me because for as much as we know about Horus, we don't really know a lot about Horus.
And going off of, I think, going off of that as I think one piece that I think we might have just hit on, because as most people probably will notice in this RambleCast, we talk very little about Horus, and when we do, we kind of are talking more about the Primarchs around him.
Right.
I feel one of the biggest issues with him is one, Aaron Dembski-Bauer hasn't written him yet, so of course he's not going to be cool, because apparently he's the deciding factor on making things cool.
Fair enough.
Don't get me wrong, books are great. I think people put too much stock on him, which puts too much weight on his shoulders. But anyway, yes. So because he doesn't appear much in the books, and because like when I read a book where he's there, I'm like, oh, this is a pleasant surprise. Horus is here. So because of that, all we have to go off of is the grandeur and gravitas that everyone gives to Horus. So then when they start to go, ooh, we're going to write stuff about Horus and throw it in, it kind of starts killing that. Kind of like with Horus's model in Forge World. It was like, oh, Horus's model's coming. It's coming. It's coming. There it is. It looks exactly like we always seen. Right. It's cool, but kind of disappointed.
And it's not even like disappointing bad. It's just like, it's because Horus and Sanguinus are the two really most drawn Primarchs, to be honest. Yep.
And that's why some people are a little upset about his model because they don't like it.
Well, that and it's just he's in a dynamic, like Sanguinus is in a dynamic pose, and his armor is exactly like it's drawn.
Yep.
Same thing with Horus. Horus is in a commanding pose, and it's like they lifted it from the artwork, and there is credit to be said there, and it's fantastic. I like both the models fine. However, I am more blown away by Perturbo's model because we didn't get a lot of drawings from him, and he looks awesome. So it's like, it's those things like
Yep. And that's what I feel is like the same deal with his books. We're like, oh, we know Horus is like the best strategist. The only time he really ever failed in combat was against the Emperor and blah 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 blah. And then we get like Wolfsbane where we're like, oh, okay. That he's not that great anymore now that I think about it. And like, so it's like we're trying to broaden his character, but at the same time as broadening his character, it's kind of killing his character at the same time.
Well, Horus suffers from the grandeur and the concept that a lot of things of this caliber suffer from. Horus has the same issue that Abaddon has, the same issue that the Avatar Cain has.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really
the poor
awesome.
Avatar of Cain.
They're all awesome, but what they're used for is to showcase how epic something is that stood up to it.
Yeah.
Like, Saint Celestine stabbed Abaddon in the chest. She's instantly super awesome.
Yep. And
Abaddon, people are like, yeah, whatever, it's Abaddon. He's a big bad anyway. But
they even went as far as going, the first time he's been wounded in 10,000 years. And now that just makes you go, oh, everyone's sitting there going, do I have a mini of her yet?
Right. But it's just like all the epicness of that character, the epicness of the Avatar Cain.
Yep.
It's just, or the epicness of Horus. It's just there. It's there. It's implied. It's known. It's accepted. But the only thing that happens from it, and it's a pitfall of a really strong character, is any confrontation with said dude of which somebody gets something over on them, survives, wounds them, whatever, it's a case of, wow, that person's so epic. But yeah, but Horus, yeah, who cares? We know about Horus. This guy spit in his face and ran away like a hero. Like, type of deal. Like that's the issue with that. And also, even when Horus is around the novels, like the first 4 novels, he's around hardcore.
Yeah.
And he has dialogue and growth, but it's really more so these entourage, his posse, right? We learn more about Malgahurst the Twisted, Abaddon, Garviel Loken, Little Horus Axamund, Torgadon, and all them. Like, the reason I can name off those guys, you learn about the loss of Sejanus and all that, is because their growth, development, and creation was done with more impact than Horus. Horus was there, it's like, oh, we know Horus. Even if you're brand new to the Horus heresy, okay, Horus heresy, Horus. This guy's Horus. He must be a big deal. Instantly, it's a big deal. It's like the Emperor. Only with the Emperor, we have proper gravitas to him. Even though we don't get much written on the Emperor, we really don't. We know big things. He made the Primarchs. He made the Custodes. He made the Space Marines. He united Mars with Terra. He slew things. We have bullet points of what the Emperor did, so the epicness is implied in the Emperor. And whenever the Emperor shows up, to the writer's credit thus far, it's pretty epic the way he's handled and described. Like, it's just like, oh, whoa, this is the Emperor. Got it.
Like, great. even in books like Master of Mankind, it shows off. And to a piece there, even there was they tried so hard. Also, I felt like they tried so hard to kind of show a little bit of the significance of Abaddon in that book too, even though Abaddon never shows up in that book. But there is a piece in it where you're kind of like, okay, so yeah, that kind of does make Abaddon a big deal when you read this piece in the book.
Right.
But it still shows off how, like you said, it still while still showing off there was never, even though they kind of play up a part of Abaddon in it, it doesn't detract from the Emperor at all.
Right. And it's the Emperor, and you go, oh, okay, he's handled well for that. The problem with Horus is they don't handle him that way because he's not that way. He's not on that level. He's a
like you said, good example is with the more recent books, they're trying to heavily foreshadow stuff we obviously already know that happens.
Right. And it's just like, so anything dealt with Horus and the calluses that they try to give him, it's just, I don't know, it's like a sense that he doesn't deserve it. You know what I mean? Like he hasn't earned the gravitas yet. Even though we know all about him, we really know all about the actions surrounding Horus. Like when Fulgrim, butchered a planet, and when the Alpha Legion infiltrated the Raven Guard, and when the Word Bearers tried to decimate the Ultramarines, and when the Iron Warriors battled the Imperial Fist for the umpteenth time, and whatever. Right? Like all these things that are happening around Horus, and it happens to be the Horus heresy, so it ultimately kind of funnels back to him, right?
Yeah.
But we don't get to see too much done by him in a certain sense. And yeah, I stopped reading a book I can't remember, it was a high number, but it's, we learned, for example, Angel Exterminatus, we learned a lot about Fulgrim, and we learned a lot about Perturbo. I became a fan of Perturbo from that book, and
that book made me very interested in Fulgrim.
But that book is a good example of stuff going on during the heresy that ultimately has nothing to do with Horus. Does it ultimately better his cause? Having a demon Primarch kind of does, yes. It also shows how they're not fortified together either, that they're willing to step on each other's backs, which also I think hurts Horus's persona. One of the things that the loyalists have once they figured out who all was actually loyalist was a locking conviction, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they may not ultimately agree on how things should be handled or Imperium Secondus, sure, but it's for the Emperor. On the side of Horus, it's death to the Emperor, not for Horus. Unless you're the Sons of Horus, it's death to the Emperor. It's Lorgar wants to
It didn't like us talking about death to the false emperor. Yeah, it sounds something a word bear would say. Every time now, when I think of Sevatar, I think of Flash. Yes. Yeah. Mm. That is the major. That is the big question. I feel that I feel chances are we would be saying this. We would be having this conversation if it was anybody but Horus, and that was the big bad in this. If Horus was just like a was like a Logar or an Angron or a Fulgrim, we wouldn't be say. But and one of the others was the head mantle. I think we would be saying the same thing because I think the same issue would arise. They would try to make him ambiguous just so we can build him up as the huge bad. But then when we try to flesh him out, we start kind of killing that illusion that built up so long. Mm. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yep. A four-armed snake, winged snake man, centaur. Actually, that's funny. I kind of prefer his demon prince form personally. Yeah. Yep. Which I preferred when he had bat wings. It makes sense. I just miss the bat wings. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Mm. Yeah. That's the one thing I kind of like about undiv. That's kind of how I feel Undivided should look. Undivided should look as unchanged as possible because they gain equal favor of all, so they kind of like cancel each other out. Yep. And the big giant skull berserker monster thing. Yep. 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 That is true. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Mm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. Apparently they do cover what goes on with Horus after Wolfsbane in the next one, Burned Earth or whatever it is, the Vulcan book right after it. Yeah, apparently they do go over that whole debacle in that book. Yep. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. We only get what we already know a lot of the times. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Which is a big deal in the 40K universe. um, Something positive, I would say, um, regardless of anything that happens, he was the one to defeat Sanguinius. A feat nobody thought would be possible. Um, yes, he saw it, but like in the grand scheme of things, he should have won that fight, and he didn't. Um, a negative thing about him, I'd say, is probably the biggest negative about him is I would say one of the major reasons why he fails is because the plot demands it. Mm-hmm. Eventually. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. 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 I, I guess it's like a prime example. In most movies, the ones that do it the best are the ones where when we leave the film, we don't go, wait, why did he lose? Yeah. 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 Didn't even Fulgrim get like a weird vibe off the Lear blade? Yeah, but I'm just saying it's like even Magnus was like, oh yeah, there are things in the warp. Like um two of the lesser Primarchs, for lack of a better word, were more aware of what was going on than the leader of everything. Yes. Who can't love the I'm sorry. I know very little about the con, but I think one of like the few little things we do know just make him so lovable. Yep. Yeah. And half his legion did fall. Yep. Yep. And I think the reason why I kind of get I he gets the pass on my end is because like we've mentioned before, he has the coolest personal transport of all the Primarchs. He's the best personal transport. Gilliman, screw that Thunderhawk. Dorn, screw on Fortress Monastery. Portorabo, screw a Stormlord slash Shadow Sword. The Khan's got a Rhino. Mm, yep. Yeah. No, I don't hate him. Um, that's hard to say, honestly. The most times when I don't like a Primarch, it's when one of them's getting overhyped. Like, like when everyone's like, when people are like, "Oh, Kurz can do this, 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 and he's the greatest," and then I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get a little sick of Kurz. Um, but then it's the same with Alfarius, like it's when tropes are played too much and people hype up a lot of them a lot is when I start to dislike them a lot. But in terms of like a good example though, like I like them all enough to want to buy their minis just so I can say I have the Primarch minis. And if I really, really didn't like them, I probably wouldn't bother. Ah, the famous nobody knows legions. Yep. Um, Magnus did nothing wrong. That's what I love about him. You prefer your Primarchs to wear clothes. No problem. Pleasure. We got Mortarion. The only one I really am caring about for 40k is honestly Fulgrim. As much like he's one of those things like obvious it's like out of all the Primarchs, yes, I would love for him to come back because he's my Primarch, but at the same time, I'm more interested in him in 30k than I am in 40k. Yep. 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 Will this be the real ending? Maybe, hopefully. Yep. Indeed. Mm-hmm.